44th season on the Eberspeche Luge World Cup Tour is well underway. 9 World Cup races, including the 50th World Championships next month from Germany. But it continues today in Oberhof, Germany, with the women's singles luge competition. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Singer. Another warm, foggy, and humid day in Oberhof. That's never a good thing in the sport of luge. However, this track was in great shape with similar conditions yesterday for the men's and doubles competition. Right now, to tell us a little more about this renovated track and today's event, I'm pleased to introduce from Team USA, World Championship medalist Emily Sweeney. Emily, thanks so much for waking up.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
Well, yeah, let's talk about this track, and I know you don't know all of the changes intimately yet.
Correct. I haven't slid on this newly renovated track, but it's still Oberhof, and it's truly one of the classic luge tracks left. You see here that there's a lot of really tight transitions. We saw a lot of action in yesterday's races, 12, 13 especially right here, and then we're going to come out of 13 into this long straightaway. The track is not over yet. There's a lot of time in this final Kreisel here, and it's going to be an exciting race today.
Should be. They've been mostly exciting throughout the season. World Cup standings right now, it is, what a surprise. Natalie back on top, Eidberger back from a year from maternity leave, leading the way over 2 other Germans, Tobitz and Eidberger, 2 of them, of course, Olympic medalists. As you check out the start list, first the qualifying group, and then the seeded group. So the first 16 or so that we see heading down this mountain all had to qualify on Friday to get into this race. And then this last group, especially the entire last page coming up in a moment, the seeded athletes, Eidberger will be number 25. Tatiana Ivanova of Russia, coming off of her victory last week in Altenburg, will be the last to go. So the athletes are getting ready, a little imagery, a little visualization, and last-minute preparations on the equipment. Oberhof, Germany. Emily, as we get ready for our first competitor, has historically been very, very kind to the home nation. I can't think of a lot of races not won by Germans here.
Right. It's a frustrating fact for some of the other competitors out there, but it really has been dominated by Germans historically. We'll see if that's the case today. I expect it will be.
Hoi-sun Jung, first to go on course, 25-year-old South Korean. World Cup luge, 2 runs, total time competition. Consistency is what it's all about.
Being first off today, with the humidity being so high, is going to help her out. It's nice to see her in the World Cup, but she's really high on the end of 7 there.
Good news for the South Koreans. They had qualifying sleds in all 3 disciplines this weekend. Yesterday, doubles and men, so I suspect we'll see them later today. Oh, and she's having a pinball machine type bottom of the track.
Right, and with how sticky the ice is, she really should be able to make a lot of those corrections, but she was hanging on a lot of the ends of those curves, and it just caught up with her off of 13 there.
Team relay coming up later today following this women's 2-heat competition. By the way, if you're waking up and joining us, thanks so much for tuning into the live streaming. Craig is watching, Ken is watching, our loyal viewers. If you've got questions or comments, tweet them at Luge Announcer. You can also email us, luge.announcer@gmail.com. I suspect we'll see a bit of that problem, that was the spot you were talking about, right, Emily?
It is, and Oberhof is a track that the curves come very quickly. So if you are offline, it is challenging to get back online. It'll have the snowball effect and just get greater and greater, and usually catches up with people right in that straightaway.
Here's Elena Stechkid of the Ukraine, 26-year-old. She's been floating around the World Cup for several years, although this is the first week this season that she qualified for the World Cup 2-run race.
It's exciting to see her making it into the World Cup, and we'll see if she can throw down 2 consistent runs. That is the goal, especially with the track going to be deteriorating as it's so, wow, very high there.
Yeah, the track definitely deteriorated last week in Altenburg, especially in the men's race, but it did okay yesterday. You were watching the replay of the race. You know, the conditions were similar, but the last sleds, you know, maybe they lost a little, right?
Right. I just can't see it holding up today.
So a second day, you say, makes that much of a difference.
I think so, but I could be proven wrong. I hope I am, to have a more even race.
Definitely rave reviews from a lot of people. David Gleischer was talking about how thin the ice was, and usually when the ice is that thin, you expect trouble, but it held out really well.
Right. Wow, you see how high. Before the renovations were done here, that would have been, I would say, 100% crash. But I'm told that it's a little more open through that labyrinth section, and you can get away with a little bit more.
Here's Klaudia Domaracka from Poland. And, you know, Maciej Karowski's done a great job the last couple of years with these young athletes. He's really been enthusiastic about his job being the FIL coach.
He really has. It's nice to see the training programs they have going throughout the summer as well. This year looked a little different, as it did for everyone, but the program itself is finding its stride, and he's doing a great job leading it. You see, she's a little tentative on the sled. Her head's up a little bit. She's not quite stretched out. I'd like to see a little more comfort out of her.
Stays in the green. For those of you new to the sport of luge, green is good for the sled on the ice. It means they're in the lead, and she should hold on to that, although Klaudia made it a little interesting down there at the finish. A 42.304 is her leading time in the early going here in Thuringia. That's the state we're in.
Even though it looked aggressive at the exit there of Kreisel, overall, she did a pretty good job of navigating the sled down in a clean way.
Just getting started, the first of 28 athletes in today's race. That's an expanded field. Up until a couple of seasons ago, the women's races only had 24 qualifiers. So it's good to see a little more expansion, and it's good to see Tova Koala racing for the second week in a row for Sweden. 19 years old.
She looks great on the sled. It has been nice to see Sweden's program make a little bit of a comeback there.
Definitely. And normally in many years we just saw them at the Lillehammer race only. But as you know, one of your coaches was a long representative of the Sweden program, doubles and singles. Bengt.
Right. Oh, very high there, but that line works coming out of 13. She really let the pressure go and had a nice exit going down to Kreisel.
Skidding up the outrun, but the clock had stopped at 42.632. Third place for the moment for the Swedish athlete. Quick question comes in from Benjamin Steiner, who's watching this morning from Canada, Emily. He's wondering what impact we think the Canadians will have on the races when they return in January, and I'll let you include your nation as well, the Americans.
I'm hoping that the North Americans will come out and make a big splash coming back into the season. It's been tough sitting out the first half of the season. There was a lot up in the air this summer for everyone, right? And then seeing that they are going to continue having the World Cup, it's great for the sport, but it is definitely unfortunate for those of us who are not able to be a part of it right now.
Well-timed question, because that's the Canadians starting at the top of the track right now in Oberhof. This is Veronica Ravenna, who, of course, has been representing her co-native country, Argentina, proudly in this sport for several years.
Right. Veronica had a lot of time in Whistler. That's where she lives, although she competes for Argentina. And I know the Canadians are in Whistler right now using this time to test very high coming into 11. But it works. She got away with it.
And she has qualified all 3 weeks. Veronica told me before the season began that was the goal. was to make it into the World Cup field every week. So far, 3 for 3, although a bit of an adventure here in Oberhof.
Yes, it caught up with her coming out of 13. Not ideal, but she will have a second run, and like you said, she's qualified for every World Cup so far this season, and that's a victory.
And we just saw a quick look at Coach Norbert Locke, the German coach. Veronica is in her second season training with the Germans, which Emily, she said, gives her the opportunity to have dinner with some of her idols.
That's a very cool way to look at it. It's nice to see some of the smaller nations partnering with the larger nations, and a lot of growth can happen through those partnerships.
It's a walkway right alongside the outrun for those athletes and sleds that don't make it all the way to the bottom. Coach Toby Schiegel, getting the Austrians ready. They're coming up in a little bit, but here's the first of the Südtirolians from northern Italy, Marian Oberhof, just 20 years old. And without a Junior World Cup this season due to the pandemic, Emily, some of the young athletes who maybe we were just going to see once or twice should be on board all season long.
Right, and throughout the week, Marian had some really strong training times. So I think the Italian junior women's program has a lot of strength, and they're young, but very early, feet down a little bit, coming in through that quick transition there. But she's done a nice job of kind of composing herself again. And I think that they're young, but there's going to be a lot of strength in the future for this women's program.
There already is for the men, and how about the doubles in Italy? I mean, they're putting 3 in the top 10 every week now.
It's exciting to watch. It really is.
Partly and thanks to that man, Olympic champion Zugler, partly thanks to a former competitor of yours, Tatiana Hofner, who's been working with the Italians.
Right, so she came on as a start coach for the Italians this year, and I think it's great. I think she's really proven that she has been able to kind of redefine the start and have longevity with it, and that's so important with the start, and so the Italian team is only going to learn from her.
All right, moving along with the action, and Ken tweeted in this question, famously here in Oberhof, as is the case in Königssee, they crank up the music when the athletes get ready to go, and he wanted to know whether you even notice the songs that are playing.
Typically, I don't notice, except for in Eagles. For some reason, I always hear it in Eagles because they always play Born in the USA when an American is on the handles, so we know what to expect. But it is fun. Typically, we'll have bands along the route here in Oberhof. It's a bummer that they're not able to be there this year.
Right.
That it really adds to the environment, but it's really a privilege to be able to have World Cups right now and have them being held safely. So I know Katarina and people that are sliding right now, it's a privilege to be able to slide right now during a pandemic.
That's very well put. Good way to look at it as Simonikova crosses in second place, just 0.03 of a second out of the lead. That was her brother, Jakob, down there applauding her on in the coach's area. And yes, usually here in Oberhof, that Finnish Kreisel is a big party zone where it seems that all of the eastern half of Germany has shown up to drink Glühwein at 9 in the morning.
She had a great run, very clean. She could be a little bit more stretched out on the sled. You see she's peaking a little bit more going into 12 there, but it's for a good reason. I'm told that the profile is a little square on 12, and so if you are off there's the potential to catch an edge, and that's what we saw in yesterday's races. So I think just double checking on that transition there, but Katarina had a very good run.
Eileen Frisch qualifying for the race for the second week in a row. She finished 19th last week in Altenburg, which I believe was her home track growing up. It was one of these two. And now the former German junior world champion competing for South Korea, top 10 finisher at the Olympic Games.
Yes, Altenburg was her home track before switching over to Korea, but being German, she has had a lot of experience on all of the German tracks. So we expect to see some good lines out of her today. hasn't really found the speed since she's shifted over to sliding for Korea. It's always interesting to see when people are able to switch countries, to see what carries with them. And so much of our comfort as a slider comes from your connection with your sled. So I think switching from the sled that she was on with Germany to switching to a completely new system, you see that she's just not as comfortable as she was when she was a German slider. That's what I'm talking about with the comfort. Her head's up high. She's a little crooked on the sled. When Eileen, when she became junior world champion, she looked much more settled on the sled than she does right now.
Interesting. And I know one of the tough personal things for Eileen has been because of her dual citizenship now, she has to spend X amount of time in each of the countries. And it's a little tough having two homes, especially when your family is so far away. Now, Elena on course, the second of the Ukrainians, 20 years old.
Saw in her start that she's a little tentative with her paddles there, very upright, and there's not a lot of power being translated into the ice there, so she's going to give up quite a bit of time on the start. But she's driving nice lines.
Now, the track, we've talked a couple of times now, they've renovated, they've changed two of the corner combinations. They've made some of these curves a little more narrow. I'm sure you're watching a little more closely than you normally would have because you will be racing here. The second race will be held next month.
I hope to be, yes. So it's interesting. From the feedback that I've heard from the athletes that are there, it's a little more open, it's a little easier to get through things, but really that could come down to track conditions as well. We're going to see more track records, I expect, today, but as the weather gets nicer, hopefully when we return, when the World Cup comes back, we'll have some really hard, fast ice, and that will really be when we learn about the new renovations.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of this is because this venue will be hosting the 2023 World Championship, so they've been putting all of this money into modernizing the facilities as well as changing the architecture of the track.
I think it's great. There was a lot of excess to the track before, so to make it more kind of environmentally friendly and cut down on that is a great move for our sport.
Nina Zugler, the second of the Italians now on course. One thing they could also do here in Oberhof is perhaps put up another hotel or two, because aside from those Luge World Championships, Oberhof will be hosting Biathlon's World Championship. That's going to be huge.
It is. I've witnessed a biathlon World Cup in Oberhof before, and it is insane. They love it. I loved it as well. Nina Zugler.
5/1000ths of a second, Zugler's advantage over Frisch. Now she's fallen behind and back into the green. Love how unpredictable this is.
It really is. She's driving very nice lines. She's looking a little more stretched out on the sled than Eileen did, so wonderful exit there from 13 to Kreisel. I expect her to stay in that green and open up the lead a bit.
And your expectation was correct, as Armin and Kurt and Ozzy and the coaching staff have probably done a good job setting up these sleds for today's conditions. Nina Zugler, maybe we'll see her regularly this year on the World Cup as well. She's been a part-time World Cupper over the last 3 seasons, just finished her studies this past summer.
She still has a couple of years left as a junior, but as you said, without a Junior World Cup going this year, everyone who can is making their way onto the World Cup tour. She looks good. She has a great person to learn from, very closely to her. So I expect to see some good things from her in the future.
In all three disciplines this young season, the Latvians have brought forward some young athletes who are already making a bit of a splash. For the women, it's Zigita Brzežina, who has qualified for the World Cup both weeks, finished 15th last week in Altenburg. Her brother is the youth Olympic gold medalist. There's a young Latvian doubles team that has been solid so far. So the rich get richer.
The Latvians have such a strong program, and I always love going to Latvia to really see how important sport is in their culture. It's motivating to see, and you see it from every level. Just being in their country, you see all the kids training hard and having fun with it, and that's what sport is about.
110 kilometers an hour down there at the bottom. That translates to 68.5 miles per hour, so 68.1 miles per hour. And that puts Brzežina right now in 5th place. Nina Zugler, Italy, leading over Korea and Poland. Not a lot of mistakes, just not a lot of speed working there.
Right, but there's a lot. I mean, they're only separated by hundredths here, so there could be a lot of shuffling in this second run.
Well, a couple of tweets coming in. Our good friend Uda from Dresden, who works the Altenburg races, is up early and watching, says it's great to hear your voice, Emily. And she said good morning to us early birds. You don't know, Uda. 3 in the morning here in the East Coast, North America. And we get ready for our first of the Russians. Ekaterina Baturina was on the sidelines a good chunk of last season, which had to be tough, especially for someone who's a veteran of the Russian program. Watching her nation host the World Championships, and she did not compete.
I can't imagine how challenging that was for Katerina. You only get so many opportunities to have a home World Championships, and to sit out is challenging, but they have such a strong program that's what breeds success, and they have shown that the Russian women are capable of doing that. Very high through the labyrinth there, but she recovered well.
The Russians have been sort of a tale of 2 weeks. None of the Russians performed well in Innsbruck, which was surprising to everyone under pretty good conditions. But then they came back, had a good week in Altenburg. Not so much so far this weekend, although they had 2 men in the top 5, I believe. The lead right now for Baturina, with Demchenko, Ketnikova, and Ivanova still to come. Question comes in from the USA, Emily. Quite simply, they would like to know how you are feeling physically, which has been a challenge for you the last several seasons.
It has been. Thank you. It's actually refreshing that that's not the biggest challenge in my life right now. So my neck and my back are doing well. I'm managing things here. The U.S. team has been testing a lot. We've been having a lot of ice time, so I'm only doing 1 session a day, just because my neck can't recover quickly enough for a double session. But overall, I'm doing quite well, so thank you.
The coaching staff, Pence, Hackle, working on their respective sleds for their athletes as we move along. Verena Holpa, the next of the young Italians. Unfortunately for the Italians, I mean, we'll see Betta a little later on, but again, speaking of injuries, a tough break for Sandra Robacha.
Oh, man, that is a very tough break. Sandra, if you're listening, my heart goes out to you, but I know she'll come back, and I think that the more that you go through in serious injuries and surgeries like that, the stronger you really do become. So she'll be back.
I like your optimism. It's almost as if you're speaking about yourself there, too.
Maybe wishful thinking there, but no, I really do believe it. I mean, you learn so much through going through that process that it only makes you a better athlete.
Armin Zugler seems somewhat pleased with it as Hoffer crosses in 2nd place ahead of her teammate Zugler, right behind the Russian Baturina.
I saw a little bit more time in her run, so I think in the second run even starting from the start, if they show the start and the replay, she hit start curve very early, and that really just scrubs a lot of your speed going into the run. So she has the potential to find a lot more speed in the second run.
Question comes in via Twitter from Craig asking whether or not the Lugers study the tracks during the off season. During your time away from Europe, are you studying these track lines?
I think that it differs from athlete to athlete. Sometimes you need that mental break and that mental escape, but if you're ready for it and you're open for it, it definitely helps. Sometimes we'll do some video sessions with Banked Walden, our coach, at least the U.S. team does. But it just depends on how you feel about it. Sometimes I need a break from thinking about luge because it just rules our life for so long.
That's a good way to put it. Natalie Mogg for Switzerland. She trains with the Germans as well. 8th place start time. Natalie started the season and ended last year among the seeded group.
Her head is a little bit high coming through the curves here. She just doesn't look like she's 100% confident, but her lines are definitely within range, so that's a great exit of 13.
Pair of 18th place finishes in the first two races for Mogg. She crosses in the lead thanks in part to that great exit, so a 42.073. Emily, I know I don't want to jinx it because you're still waiting to get over to Europe, but you've got to be loving the fact that the World Cup finale is going to be quite a beautiful location in Natalie's home country.
I have been traveling for 13 seasons on the World Cup, and I have not been to St. Moritz. So I'm really hoping that I'm able to get there, and I would love to have that experience. Everyone who goes to St. Moritz says that it's an incredible track, and it really is unlike any other. So I hope to have that experience, and if not this year, then I hear it's on the tour for next year as well.
It would be great to see it as a regular stop. I mean, it's a good location. It's convenient to get to. If you're able to take a little more cash out of the cash machine, you're going to need it in San Moritz that week. But
that's what I hear. But it's nice to see races outside of Germany. I mean, any track outside of Germany, I say yes, let's go to it, just because it's so dominated.
So true. In fact, Azula Zerna gets ready for Latvia, the second of the Latvians. She's on course now. Right now, Innsbruck is the only race year in and year out outside of Germany that you can drive to.
Right.
And San Moritz will be added to that list, hopefully.
Ula here, her last paddle sent her a little bit before she settled onto the sled, so she's working her way back from that start curve mistake right now.
Ula was the top placing Latvian at the Olympic Games. It was a disappointing Olympics in Pyeongchang for Latvia. 12th place for Zerna.
Beautiful Kreisel.
Yeah, did really well down at the bottom, 42.152. This and her home track, I believe, in Sigulda are the two tracks in the world that have a Kreisel to end the course, right?
I think those are the only two, yes. And it is challenging. It really does leave a lot of pressure in there to have a straight exit to come out and cross the finish line there. It's not terrible if you're off, but there's so much time in this Kreisel. It's underestimated quite a bit, but the person that I learned the most from actually was watching Julian von Schleinitz, the German slider. He found 3/10 every run in Kreisel here, and I don't know how he did it, but you can see a lot of people lose or gain time, so it truly is not over until you cross the finish line here.
Here's the winner of Friday's qualifying Nations Cup race, Hannah Prak. Like so many of the young athletes we've seen already in the last 20 minutes or so, Hannah has been a part-time luger, part-time student who appears to be full-time this year, and she's off to a pretty good season. She had a 5th place finish in the sprint on her home track 2 weeks ago in Austria.
Right, Hannah, I mean, to come out, and she's the winner of the Nations Cup from this week. So especially coming back, she had a challenging week in Altenburg last year. Last season, she had a pretty bad crash there, and working back from fear over that is a challenging process. And so it's nice to see her come back this week and really have a good run in Nations Cup, and she's throwing together a good run today too.
Finish Kreisel. Oh, and she goes sideways up the outrun. She had the lead, could have been even more of a lead. Hopefully she's okay. Coach Rennie Friedel looked a little concerned there at the bottom. 41.981.
We're at a little bit of a blind spot here, but there is a second pressure in Kreisel that if you're off, especially if the ice is a little bit soft and you catch an edge, it really can lead to a strong angle there at the exit. That looks like a strong hit.
What this previews ominously is the fact that later today we've got the relay competition, and you're not going to be hitting any paddle if you're going up the outrun in that position.
No, and this is a very challenging team relay spot because it's almost a blind paddle as well. So you're coming off of a Kreisel, and then there's an uphill. So it's going to be exciting, I think, this afternoon. So come back if you're to watch.
Twice already this season, Germany has swept the podium. This is the woman on the outside looking in, still developing her luge chops. Cheyenne Rosenthal out of Winterberg, 7th place finish at the World Cup opener. The defending champion of this race, Anna Bierreiter, last year in her first full season won 2 races on the World Cup. She did not even qualify for the team, at least out of the gate this season.
Right, the German program is so deep, and they have a lot of internal competition. We didn't really know how that was going to go this season, having Natalie and Diana come back on tour after taking a year for maternity leave. So it is surprising that you have last year's winner not even in the race. But Cheyenne here, she's having a great run, and that's what you want to see. You want to see, even if you're going to miss out on the race, you want to see your teammates do well.
Definitely, 1600s up, and I think it was very simple that the race off 3 weeks ago in Königssee, the final weekend of the Nationals for Germany, Anna finished 5th. So that went Natalie, Julia, Diana, Cheyenne, and Anna. So only 4 spots.
It's tough. We just finished our own team selection races, and I think there's almost more stress in a team selection race than there is in a World Cup race sometimes, especially in such a strong program like Germany has.
Deanna Eidberger, one of 2 Olympic medalists in today's race, getting ready at the top now. And Deanna, like her teammate, good friend Natalie Eidberger, back from maternity leave. She told me she's come on quicker than she could have even thought, with a pair of 3rd place finishes to open up the season.
Right, it's been great to see, and now this is her home track as well. So she's my favorite for today, actually, to win. So don't let me down, Diana.
Okay, I like how you're going out on a limb this early in the race with still the seeded athletes to come, but so far so good. Deanna now living in Bavaria with her husband Chris and new baby Levi, but as you mentioned, this is where she grew up.
Nice exit of 13 there. She holds it very tight to that right wall coming into Kreisel, which is where the speed is at. But still another mistake coming off the exit.
41.672, so just like that, not one but 2 Germans have pretty well distanced themselves from the rest of the field. As a point of comparison, Hannah Prak of Austria is in 3rd, but 0.3 of a second back. Deanna said she still has a lot of work to do physically, Emily, to get back into shape, but she's looking pretty good.
Absolutely, but I think through my own experience with coming back after, very different than pregnancy. I have no idea how that will work out, but so much of our sport is mental and the technical side of driving. So if she does have farther to come back physically, she can make up for that with her driving skill and sled tech and confidence on the sled.
Here's the last of the Austrians in today's race. Lisa Schulte, actually Egla is still coming up. Sorry about that. Schulte on ice now. A couple of tweets coming in. Jim tweeting in from Whistler, up very early in Whistler, or up late last night. He sent a great video of actually the big party in past years that happens in Oberhof. Not so much a question as to rub it in our faces. And Ken wants to know, Emily, what do you miss most about not being on tour?
If I'm being honest, I have my boyfriend.
I suspected that might be the answer.
Yes, so it's been, a lot of people have had hardships this year. Not being able to travel has been challenging for a long-distance relationship. So I haven't seen Dominic in over 10 months, so that's been rough. But outside of that, really, we put so much into our training, and especially I'm towards the end of my career, so I'm watching these World Cups happen, and they're experiences that you don't get back. So a lot of training and work from so many people, from our team, our trainers, our coaches. All of these are just missed opportunities that we're watching go by, and it's tough to watch.
Tough to watch, and lest we not also wish Lisa Schulte a happy birthday, as the song just played in the background. The coaches have the sign. Schulte crosses in 4th place right now. It's Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the Central European leaderboard at the moment. Still 2 Germans to come, and the 2 top-ranked athletes in the world. Could be a big Deutschland kind of afternoon. But let's see what the Latvian has to say about that. Candia Aparioda on course now. Our best wishes to her brother Christers, who had a crash during training and did not race yesterday.
A little bit of an uneven start curve there but a start record, so it didn't really matter.
Well done, 15.404 at that split. We expect she could be losing time along the way to the Germans, but can she keep it close is the question.
We'll see. The Latvian sleds, they can run in situations like this. I mean, having a home track of Zugler with the river right by the track, they have a lot of experience with coming up with setups with a humid environment. But she's fallen into the red going into Kreisel. Wow, 5,000.
At the bottom, 5,000ths of a second. A little bit of a mini surprise there as Candia Aparioda takes the lead for Latvia. Hey, that's a great point that I never thought of, Emily. So having the river next to the track, it's natural humidity to have to deal with every day during training.
Right. If it's not very cold in Zugler, you have a lot of, you kind of get that film over the track, which is what we're seeing here today. There's still some sheen to it, but there has to be a layer from that humidity. A little crooked in the transition from 11 to 12 here. She has some time, even with setting that track record.
Candia coming off of a 7th place last week as George Hackl continues to work on, I'm guessing that's Natalie's sled.
I would say so.
The remaining Bavarian in today's race. And here is Eliza Taruma. This is Aparioda's teammate, her more experienced teammate with the Olympic medal, part of the team relay from 2014.
600ths behind already from that start curve. Candia did a fantastic job.
But this will give us, Emily, an indication of whether there's consistency among the Latvian sled setup, because
right.
Candia was so fast down below. Looks as if Elisa's making a few more errors.
It does, but with being 600ths behind right off the bat, I mean, that's a tough deficit to come back from on this shorter track.
6th place right now, 0.3 of a second back. Little mixed bag report card down at the bottom from Coach Martins Rubenis. Right now it's Latvia leading over a pair of Germans, and then Austria in 4th and 5th place. We still have 7 sleds remaining in Oberhof.
Second place only 500 behind. Deanna Eidberger, she enrolled dritte und Eliza Taruma is aktuell auf dem 6. Platz, the 6th place currently for Taruma from Latvia.
Such a sad shot seeing
I was
the
just
empty
gonna say that,
stand.
yeah. I mean, this place is always hopping.
It really is. You can't walk a curve without hitting another brat stand and just having people. So I'm happy that everyone can follow along safely from home, but it's strange.
Well, again, I mean, we've said this, it will be an ongoing theme. It's just great that they are staging these races. They have taken this entire pandemic, the testing, the health, the separation, the bubbles. They've taken it very, very seriously, and there has been minimal to almost no positive tests among the sports. I don't think any among the athletes in the last 3 weeks, and just a couple of coaches. Now
Correct.
we have Victoria Demchenko on course. Did you see her crash 2 weeks ago or last week?
Oh, I did. That was, I see the highlight reels, so I've stayed away from watching entire women's races, but I definitely watch the highlight reels. And to see her come back here, she looks great on the sled right now. And
have you, Emily, ever known an athlete that just sort of shrugs off a bad crash as quickly as Victoria?
I don't think so. She is a champ. She just keeps going, and it's encouraging to see.
Well, what is not encouraging is these Russian sleds so far today, so far this weekend, as she is 0.3 of a second back, 4th place. That's not bad, but that was a fairly clean run.
It was. It is very tight in that 4 through 6 or 7 kind of stretch right now. So it's, I don't know. But typically this season, when the ice has been a little softer, the Russian sleds have not been running as quickly. So that could just be a sled setup situation.
That's a good look at what's a much tougher exercise in sport than most people realize.
It is, and the you can see though how soft the ice is with how kind of easily her spikes were digging in there. But that's going to be frustrating, trying to find those tenths of a second to come back in the second run.
Natalie Geisenberger getting ready in the warm-up area, but on we go with the final Austrian. Madeline Egla is off to a kind of an Andrea Betta start of this season. She has been close to the podium. In fact, she's been on the podium in 2 of the 3 races after run number 1 just to fall off. So she's had a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th. Sometimes that's the hardest first step, and she has the start record.
Start record. You see how long her arms are there, just propelling her forward. Madeline, she's finished, like you said, 4th, but a lot of that has been to mistakes. So she has so much speed. I think she's had almost the most potential out of any athlete in a lot of the races. She's just still finding her way with consistency.
She's been one of the fastest starters for several years now, although she is coming off of a shoulder injury during the offseason. Crossing in 4th place, it's been somewhat consistent the last couple of sleds, 41.912. It continues to be Latvia leading the way, ahead of a pair of Germans, and Austria with 3 in the top 7, with the final 5 sleds still to come.
She should be happy with that performance. I mean, she didn't have that lightning speed. Oh, well, she did a little bit of a shake of the head there, but it looked a lot cleaner than some of her race runs have been this season. And with a start record, you have to be proud of that.
Records will be expected to fall because this is a new course redesign, and basically every track and start record this weekend entering these races were from the Nations Cup on Friday. But the true test will be in January when the tour returns here. Now, Julia Tobitz. Julia began her career near the Altenburg track, but has spent the bulk of it right here in Thuringia, training in Oberhof. And really acquitted herself last year on the tour with teammates Geisenberger and Eidberger on maternity leave. Julia won the World Cup overall. She was actually coming on 2 years ago with a great start to that season.
300th off of Madeline's start time there, and I think she didn't have the right angle going in, so the sled got away from her a little bit, but we've seen her find speed on any track, on any day.
So true. She's won.
Big skid going into 12.
We'll see how that translates. The next split is the Finnish split. 111.3 is 69 miles per hour. And 7th place. That's a little disappointing.
It is. I mean, so I mentioned it earlier with the entrance of curve 12. It's very square right now, and when you have a square entrance, it almost creates a hole of the track where the sled can get airborne. And then once you find contact with the ice again, you have to be very careful of what angle you hit the ice on. And it looks like she just hit at the wrong angle there, and then that's what caused that power skid at the beginning of 12.
I mean, Julia was saying earlier this week that despite growing up here, training here, she's not had a good relationship with this track. Is the way she put it. We're hoping to be getting along a little better this year, is how she put it.
I didn't grow up sliding there, but I have similar sentiments. Okay. Oh, actually, her skid happened before that entrance there, so she really just carried a lot of pressure off of 11, and it caught up with her.
Natalie with a trio of second-place finishes so far this season for the 5-time Olympic medalist. She wrote earlier this week that she's very satisfied with her 3 seconds. And as she put it, Emily, she says, I have one laughing and one crying eye. Not quite sure what that means. Maybe that she would rather have those seconds be firsts, or maybe that she's just missing her new baby at home.
I think that it's a little bit of a feeling of surreal, too, a surreal feeling where you really don't know where you're going to shake out, and that's uncertainty to come out on a podium and have such a strong start that Natalie has had. It's kind of unbelievable in the best of ways.
Definitely. Hey, 9,000's back at that last split. Can red turn green here at the bottom?
She didn't hold it early to Kreisel like the others did. Yeah.
So moving ahead of her teammate Rosenthal, but behind her teammate Eidberger, Germany 2-3-4, behind Kendia Apariod of Latvia. And I know you're 5,000 miles away, Emily, but is the weather playing any role in the fact that some of the best have not been able to quite catch the top of the leaderboard?
I actually don't think that was due to weather. I think that she had the speed to overtake the lead, but it was that entrance to Kreisel that she just didn't hold it to the early entrance, and she lost a lot of time there. Maybe the gap would be larger if the track is deteriorating, but she still had potential to have the fastest run in that.
3 remain. Only 0.005 of a second separate place number 1 from place number 2, Apariod and Eidberger. But still up, we have the world champion from Russia, Ketnikova. We have Ivanova coming up. She'll be the last to go, but next on course will be the final Italian, Andrea Better. She's been consistent this season, but Emily, probably not the consistency she would like. A trio of 9th place finishes.
Right. I mean, last season, Andrea, I don't know how many 4th place. Oh, another start record.
That's great.
I don't know how many times she finished 4th last season. So to come back and be so close to the podium last year and be a little bit farther away this season, it has to be frustrating. But she really is one of the most consistent sliders. And that, given time, will pay off. We saw it last year with Katnikova. Katnikova was probably one of the most consistent sliders last season, and it paid off at the right time. So you just have to keep going.
And Andrea finally did make it onto the podium late last season. She crosses in 11th place, 0.4 of a second back, despite the start record. And we alluded to it earlier here in the run. Tatiana Hofner of Germany has been working with the Italians, and it has paid off at the start in all three disciplines. I wonder if Tatiana's here today at the race. Spectators basically not allowed, but she's sort of a dignitary in these parts.
If she has a coach's credential, she could be there. I'm not sure. Andrea looks good on the sled. She's a little crooked there, though. You can see a little uneasiness coming over to 12.
It's a great look at that straightaway, and that's where you get the sense of how confident some of these athletes might be. I mean, Pavlichenka's head is always back. Others are peeking up before that entrance into the Kreisel. And now proudly donning the World Championship bib is Katerina Katnikova of Russia. In some respects, her world title last year was a surprise. She came out of nowhere, but in other respects, Emily, not so much. It was home ice, and she's been consistently top 10 the last several years, if
right,
not on the podium.
That's what I was just talking about. To me, it wasn't a surprise. She really was she was kind of the sleeper athlete last season. She was so consistent. No one was really paying attention, and then boom, she kept building throughout the season and really did the perfect progression towards World Championships.
Kind of like Jonas Müller with Austria. Sort of happy to be in the shadows of the bigger names. Like, you don't have to pay attention to me. I'm going to do my job.
Exactly, and that kind of freedom that you have in that position is a strength.
Well, 42.107 is a little mystifying. It's late in the run with only one sled remaining, and I suspect we will really get a sense with the next sled on whether these are course conditions playing into this, whether these are another poor week of Russian sled setup. Not a big display of driving mistakes, as per usual for Katnikova.
Right. We'll see. I don't know how. I know that they have separate sled makers on their team. I don't know who's on the same sled versus the other. So this could be discouraging to Ivanova at the start, knowing that her teammate came down 4/10 behind, or she could have no qualms about it if she does have a different sled maker. A little rough entrance there, so there was time in kind of the finesse of that run, but no glaring mistakes.
Tatiana Ivanova's victory last week in Altenburg was her 15th career World Cup win. That's far and away the most of the active non-Germans racing right now, men, women, and doubles. However, she had a very rough opening weekend in Innsbruck. I believe it was 20th place.
She's putting together a good run so far. Has a nice setup going into Labyrinth.
Ivanova
a little early.
Will turn 30 next month. Seems like she's been around longer than that. Speed decent at 69.2. We've only had one hit 70. That was Eidberger. And a sixth place time. All things considered, as the last to come down, not too bad. An outside chance at a podium. But the race for the podium really at the moment looks to be between third and fourth.
It was a very good run for Ivanova. I mean, she showed up and she performed through that run, so see how the second run shakes out.
Well, we have finished run number one, and Ivanova is in the hunt in the top six right now. Russians are in 6th and 7th. But as we turn our attention to the standings, it's a bit of a surprise. The Latvian, but only 0.005 a second up on Eidberger. Natalie, I'm just finding out, had a problem with a foggy shield, which affected her vision on the way down. She finds herself in third place, and don't count her out from the top of the podium. Rosenthal in fourth. And not a lot of big surprises other than the Latvian. Does that surprise you?
It does. It's a pleasant surprise to see her up there. I really hope that she can